My name is Vincent Patterson, and I'm 48 years old. For 19 years, I dedicated my life to Bradshaw and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Seattle. I believed that loyalty, hard work, and delivering results would matter more than office politics. I was wrong. I started fresh out of business school in 2005, hungry to prove myself. Over nearly 2 decades, I climbed from junior analyst to senior vice president of strategic partnerships. I had a corner office on the 28th floor with a view of Puget Sound. My annual salary was $275,000, plus bonuses that could reach another $150,000. Not bad for a kid from Spokane whose parents both worked factory jobs. The company specialized in corporate restructuring and merger advisory. We had carved out a solid reputation in the Pacific Northwest market. Our clients trusted us because we delivered. And for nearly 2 decades, I was one of the main reasons why. Gregory Whitmore became CEO in 2019. At 58, he was everything I wasn't. Politically savvy, charming with investors, and ruthless when it suited him. He had silver hair he kept perfectly styled, wore $1,000 suits, and drove a black Mercedes S-Class worth over $100,000. I respected his business acumen, but never fully trusted him. There was something in his eyes during board meetings, a calculating coldness that made me uncomfortable. The opportunity that changed everything came in January 2024. Summit Tech, a software company in Denver, was looking to acquire a smaller firm to expand into financial services. The total deal value was just over $1 billion, the largest merger our company had ever handled. Gregory saw dollar signs. The commission alone would be worth $12 million to Bradshaw and Associates. He assigned me to lead the due diligence process. For 6 months, I worked 16-hour days reviewing financial statements, conducting management interviews, and coordinating with lawyers. I flew to Denver 9 times, spending countless hours in conference rooms. My wife Rebecca barely saw me. Our 15-year-old daughter, Olivia, started calling me the ghost dad because I was never home for dinner. But I didn't complain. This was what I lived for. The complex dance of corporate negotiations, solving problems others couldn't handle. The Summit Tech executives respected me. Their CFO, Margaret Henderson, once told me I was the most thorough analyst they'd ever worked with. Everything was proceeding smoothly. The merger was scheduled to close in mid-August 2024, just 6 weeks away. Both companies had signed letters of intent. The regulatory approvals were in place. I had personally verified every aspect of the deal structure. That's when Gregory decided I was a problem. On a Tuesday morning in early July 2024, I was reviewing final contract amendments when my computer chimed with a new email. The sender was Gregory's assistant, Helen Crawford. The subject line read, "Employment Status Update." I opened it expecting routine HR communication. Instead, I found 4 sentences that would change my life forever. Dear Mr. Patterson, effective immediately, your employment with Bradshaw and Associates has been terminated. Please collect your personal belongings and surrender your company equipment to security before leaving the building today. A severance package will be discussed separately. I read it 3 times. Then I looked at the timestamp, 9:47 a.m. I glanced at my watch, 9:52 a.m. 5 minutes. That's how long it took for 19 years of my life to be reduced to corporate boilerplate. No phone call, no meeting, no explanation. Just an email as cold as a Seattle winter. I sat there staring at my screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The office continued its normal rhythm around me. Nobody knew that my world had just collapsed. My first instinct was to storm into Gregory's office and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was years of corporate experience, or the survival instinct that kicks in when you realize you're under attack. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. I walked to Gregory's office. Through the glass partition, I could see him on a conference call. Helen went pale when she saw me approaching. "Is he available?" I asked calmly. "He's in a very important call with Summit Tech," she stammered. "Maybe later this afternoon." "I'll wait." For 20 minutes, I watched Gregory through the glass. When he finally emerged, he looked surprised to see me still sitting there. "Vincent, I heard you got some news today," he said with fake concern. "I did," I replied, standing up. 19 years, Gregory. I think I deserved better than an email from your assistant." He glanced around, conscious of other employees nearby. "Let's talk in my office." We walked in and he closed the door. "Look, Vincent, these decisions are never easy. But with the Summit merger moving forward, we need to restructure the team. Bring in fresh perspectives." "Fresh perspectives," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" The board felt it was time for a change. I almost laughed. "The board? I've been in every board meeting for 3 years. Half of them don't even understand what we do here." His jaw tightened. "The decision has been made. Your severance package will be generous, 6 months salary plus accrued vacation time." 6 months salary. After 19 years of making this company millions, I was worth 6 months' pay. "I understand," I said quietly. He looked surprised at my calm response. "Good. I'm glad you're taking this professionally." "Of course. I've learned a lot here." I stood and extended my hand. "I wish you all the best with the Summit deal." He shook my hand, relief visible on his face. I walked back to my office and began packing. 20 minutes later, I was carrying a cardboard box to the elevator, past colleagues who avoided eye contact. The security guard, Tom Rodriguez, walked me to my car. We'd chatted hundreds of times about his grandson's soccer games. "Sorry about this, Mr. Patterson," he said. "This doesn't seem right." "Don't worry, Tom. Things have a way of working out." Have you ever been through something like this? Share your experience below. That evening, I sat in my home office staring at the box of belongings. Rebecca was making dinner, and I could hear Olivia practicing violin upstairs. Normal sounds, but nothing felt normal. I opened my laptop and began going through files I'd accumulated over the years. Most executives keep copies of important documents on personal drives. It's not technically allowed, but it's standard practice. I had gigabytes of data spanning nearly 2 decades. As I scrolled through folders, something caught my attention, a folder labeled Summit Internal Communications. Inside were email threads, recorded phone conversations, and meeting notes that painted a very different picture of the merger. There were emails between Gregory and Summit CEO Robert Chen discussing eliminating potential obstacles. There was a recorded conference call where Gregory explicitly stated that certain senior employees would need to be moved aside before the deal could proceed. Most interesting was a series of text messages between Gregory and his brother-in-law, who happened to be a major shareholder in Summit Tech. They discussed how Gregory would receive a $2.1 million personal bonus, separate from the company's commission, once the merger was complete. This bonus was contingent on the deal closing without complications. Suddenly, my termination made perfect sense. Gregory hadn't fired me because of restructuring. He'd fired me because I knew too much about the deal's irregularities, and he couldn't risk me raising questions that might delay or derail the merger. I leaned back and smiled for the first time in hours. Gregory thought he'd eliminated a problem. What he'd actually done was create a much bigger one. The next morning, instead of rushing to work, I made coffee and sat on our back porch. It was a beautiful July morning. For the first time in months, I had nowhere urgent to be. Rebecca found me there an hour later, still in my pajamas. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly good," I said. "I realize Gregory may have done me a favor." She raised an eyebrow. "A favor? He fired you by email." "He did. And in doing so, he made a very expensive mistake." Over the next 3 days, I organized my evidence methodically. I created a secure folder on an encrypted drive and documented everything: the irregular communications, the undisclosed personal payments, the conflicts of interest, the timeline of my termination. But I didn't act immediately. That would have been emotional. Instead, I waited and watched. 1 week after my termination, I received a call from Margaret Henderson, Summit Tech's CFO. "Vincent, I heard about what happened. I wanted to reach out." "I appreciate that, Margaret. How are things with the merger? That's why I'm calling. We've hit complications in the final review. There are documentation gaps nobody seems able to address. Richard keeps assuring us everything is fine, but my team is nervous. I smiled. What kind of documentation gaps? Compliance records, regulatory filings, financial reconciliation reports, the items you usually handled. Gregory says he's bringing in consultants, but it's been 5 days with no progress. That sounds frustrating. It is. Would you be willing to meet with me? Off the record. I'd value your perspective. We met Wednesday afternoon at a coffee shop in Denver. I'd flown down on Southwest, coach this time, paying my own way. Margaret looked exhausted. The merger is supposed to close next Monday, she said. But we're missing critical documentation. When I ask Gregory, he either changes the subject or tells me not to worry about minor technicalities. What does your legal team say? They're recommending we delay until everything is documented, but Gregory is pushing hard to proceed as scheduled. He says any delay could jeopardize the entire deal. I nodded thoughtfully. Margaret, when someone is unusually eager to rush through complex processes, it's worth asking why. What's the hurry? Gregory says market conditions might change. Market conditions for a software merger in July 2024. I raised an eyebrow. The tech sector has been stable for months. What specific conditions is he concerned about? She didn't have an answer, but I could see the wheels turning. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to verify the integrity of the due diligence process, what would they look for? I'd want to see all communications between the parties. I'd want to understand if everyone has properly disclosed any personal financial interests. And I'd want to know if any key personnel were removed from the process at critical moments, and why. Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Removed how? Imagine if someone who knew all the details suddenly wasn't available to answer questions during final review. That might be worth investigating. What would you have done in their place? Let us know in the comments. We talked for another hour. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I simply asked questions that any experienced CFO would want answers to. By the time we shook hands, Margaret had a very different look in her eyes. Thank you, Vincent. This has been enlightening. That evening, I flew back to Seattle and waited. Thursday morning, my phone rang. It was Helen Crawford. Vincent, Mr. Whitmore would like to speak with you. Could you come to the office around 2 p.m.? Interesting. A face-to-face meeting meant Gregory was either very angry or very worried. Possibly both. I arrived at exactly 2 p.m. Helen escorted me to Gregory's office. He was standing by his window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. When he turned around, I could see the stress etched on his face. Vincent, thank you for coming in. No problem. What can I do for you? I understand you had coffee with Margaret Henderson yesterday. There it was. I did. She reached out to me. We've worked together for months, so it seemed natural. What did you discuss? She mentioned documentation concerns, gaps in the due diligence package. She seemed stressed about the timeline. Gregory's jaw tightened. And what did you tell her? I told her these kinds of issues are normal. I suggested she work with the current team to resolve concerns. He relaxed slightly. Good. That's good advice. Then I added casually, I did mention that if she had questions about documentation I'd prepared, she might want to request access to all the original files, just to ensure nothing was missed in the transition. The color drained from Gregory's face. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Vincent, I think there may have been a misunderstanding about your termination. Perhaps we acted too hastily. The company could benefit from your continued involvement. Really? Last week, you told me the board wanted fresh perspectives. The board has reconsidered. We'd like to offer you a consulting position. Same salary, full benefits, just until the merger closes. I pretended to think about it. That's generous, but I'm not sure I'm the right fit anymore. Of course you are. You know this deal better than anyone. Name your price. It's not about money. Then what? What do you want? I looked him straight in the eye. I want the truth. His face went pale again. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. We stared at each other. In that moment, I think he realized I knew everything. About the personal payments, about his brother-in-law, about the real reason for my termination. My phone rang. It was Margaret Henderson. "Excuse me," I said, then answered. "Vincent, we need to talk urgently. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I have questions about the documentation you mentioned." "Of course. What time?" 8 a.m. at our Denver office." "I'll be there." I hung up and looked at Gregory. He was gripping the edge of his desk, knuckles white. That was Margaret. She wants to discuss documentation issues. Apparently, the gaps are bigger than initially thought. Gregory stood abruptly. "Vincent, this merger is critical for everyone at this company. If it falls through, we'll have to lay off 30% of our staff. Good people will lose their jobs. That would be unfortunate. These are people with families, mortgages, kids in college. Don't let your personal feelings about me hurt innocent people." I stood as well. "Gregory, I've never let personal feelings interfere with business decisions. That's the difference between us." I walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Gregory, you might want to prepare some answers for Margaret's questions. She strikes me as the thorough type." The next morning, I flew to Denver for the most satisfying meeting of my career. Margaret had assembled her entire legal and finance team. "Vincent, thank you for coming," Margaret said. "After our conversation, my team did additional research. We discovered some deeply concerning inconsistencies. For 3 hours, I answered their questions with complete honesty. I walked them through every aspect of the due diligence process, explained the significance of missing documents, and provided context for confusing communications. When they asked about conflicts of interest, I told them about Gregory's undisclosed personal financial incentives. When they asked about the timeline for my termination, I explained how it coincided with their final review requests. When they asked if I had documentation, I told them I'd be happy to provide whatever they needed. By noon, Margaret's team had made their decision. "We're postponing the merger indefinitely, pending a full investigation." I flew back to Seattle that afternoon feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from Gregory and board members, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to discuss. The story broke in the Seattle Business Journal the following Tuesday. Bradshaw and Associates CEO under investigation for merger fraud. The article detailed the undisclosed conflicts of interest, the suspicious timing of personnel changes, and the documentation irregularities that had derailed the billion-dollar deal. By week's end, Gregory had been terminated by the board and was facing SEC investigations. The merger with Summit Tech was officially cancelled. Bradshaw and Associates' stock price dropped 40%, and the company was forced to lay off 60 employees. But here's the interesting part. Summit Tech offered me a position as their Director of Strategic Acquisitions. My starting salary was $310,000 plus a signing bonus of $85,000. They wanted someone with integrity to lead their future merger activities. I accepted. On my first day at Summit Tech, I received an email from Helen Crawford. She'd been let go when Bradshaw downsized, but had found a new job. "Mr. Patterson, I wanted you to know that I never felt right about sending that termination email. I'm glad things worked out for you. You always treated everyone with respect, regardless of their position. That's rare in corporate America." I replied simply, "Thank you, Helen. I wish you all the best in your new role." 2 weeks later, I ran into Tom Rodriguez at a Mariners game. He'd found work at a downtown law firm and seemed happy. "Mr. Patterson, how are you doing?" "Great, Tom. How about you?" "Can't complain." "Hey, I heard about what happened with Mr. Whitmore. Crazy stuff." "It was certainly unexpected." He leaned closer. "Between you and me, a lot of us saw it coming. Guy always acted like he was better than everyone else. But you always remembered my grandson's name. Asked about his games. That says something about a person's character. I smiled. Thanks, Tom. That means a lot. As I walked back to my seat, I thought about the past month. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't planning elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's simply allowing the truth to surface naturally. Sometimes it's maintaining your integrity while others destroy themselves with their own greed. Gregory had fired me because he saw me as an obstacle to his personal enrichment. He thought eliminating me would clear his path to a $2.1 million payday. Instead, he'd removed the one person who might have helped him navigate the concerns that eventually sank the deal. His own actions had been his downfall. I just helped shine a light on them. These days, I sleep better at night. I work for a company that values ethics and transparency. My wife Rebecca says I seem happier, more relaxed. My daughter Olivia, now 16, told me she's proud of how I handled all that drama at your old job. Gregory, from what I hear, is working for a small consulting firm in Portland, making less than half his former salary. The SEC investigation resulted in fines and professional sanctions that effectively ended his corporate career. I don't take pleasure in his misfortune, but I also don't regret the choices I made. In business, as in life, integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when people are watching. It's about building a foundation strong enough to support you when everything else falls apart. My 19 years at Bradshaw and Associates had taught me that lesson. The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply people try to bury it. And when it does, you want to be standing on solid ground. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to TalesFlix for more real-life stories of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Your like helps these untold stories reach someone who needs them. Don't miss the next story, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.